Hi everyone, welcome to this Change Your World Facebook Live. Um, Big shout to the wonderful Susie Beaumont for creating the Change Your World conference in Inverness in April, which I'm more than happy and very proud to attend. And I'm sure will be a fantastic event. I'm sure everybody is trying to grab the last tickets if you haven't already booked one. It's already a well-attended event, and there are some tickets that you can get hold of if you just follow the links and everything else. Um, we've already started to see some questions coming through, so during the course of the next 10-15 minutes, I'll run through some of the things that we're doing at the conference, and we'll be able to answer some of your questions live today, hopefully. But anybody who posts questions, we'll be able to pick up on those and post answers to those questions after this live event. So I think over the 22 years that I've been involved in elite sports and over 35 years in the world of sleep, people taking it for granted, no really defined approach, a lot of myths and misunderstandings. It's been a little bit of a journey to try since the late 90s to where we are now to try and find ways to get humans to deal with the ever-increasing demands, which we now find ourselves in this 24/7 world. What I do with elite sport athletes and organizations is no different than what you can do with everyday life. It's just a human recovery process that everybody can achieve. I wrote a little book in 2016. It's not really a self-help book. It's a little guide, a little journey through my career. Inside there's lots of great stuff. It's now in over 14 different languages around the world. So it's not just a UK or Scottish-centric issue, sleep for this new generation. It's a global thing. And while we want to try and keep away from the fear factors of we're all going to get Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's when we get older, and burnout and suicides and addictive behaviors and stress, anxiety, depression, all of these things that are growing, not only just in the younger generation, but in every generation. All we really need to do is to switch one of the three health and well-being pillars around and stop making it the third one, the one that's never been investigated. So where we have nutrition, we have exercise as the first two pillars, we have sleep as well. So what we're all trying to do, including Change the World, is to bring that first pillar to number one. So first of all, you have to redefine your approach to sleep. That will then give you the mood and motivation to challenge yourself with exercise and nutrition. There is so much out there in that world. It can get very, very confusing for everybody to what to do, why to do it, because it's constantly changing. So what we do is, first of all, define your approach to sleep. And then from that particular point, you can make considered choices to what other interventions, devices, supplements that you might want to bring into your life to help you personally get through what you're trying to achieve, your occupation and lifestyle. So we're going to touch on some things. Over that 22 years, I've been looking at little challenges that encapsulated itself into what's called an R90 technique. It's covering off the 7 KSRIs, as we call them, the key sleep recovery indicators. And if you make a little touch point with each of those 7 areas through awareness, education, or maybe changing one or two little things, that will all aggregate up into a much better approach that you can take. And remember, it's all about you and how you approach these things. Lots of outside influences. So number one, if you can record these things or write them down, make a start, is circadian rhythms. It is a very simple process of sun up and sundown. It's about light, dark, and temperature changes. The circadian process, the sun up and sundown process, has been going on and never changes. It's carrying on every single day, and we can't affect it. We are human beings with a brain, and we also have bodily functions that are triggered by our brain. And our relationship with that process has never changed, will never change, but our lifestyles and everything around us are consistently changing. So maybe we've just been moving further and further away from this process, and without looking at this third pillar as much as we've done with the other two, it's not surprising that in this generation, which should be the most healthiest and the most driven acknowledged population on this planet, we're seeing so many counterproductive side effects growing in the background across the globe. So tap circadian rhythms in your browser, look at some images, and just get a real feeling of what this process is doing every day around you. Number 2 is your chronotype. Owls and larks, AMers and PMers, morning types, evening types. This is a little genetic twist. And around 70% of the population, on research specifically, but certainly in my career, I've seen this quite a lot and read about it, around 70% of the population will be PMers. And yet we've been living as humans in an AMers world. It might be slightly changing as we're here at this moment in time in a global 24/7 world, but this has not changed. So more emphasis needs to be paid on the PMers because they have a slightly different relationship with that circadian process. They're a sort of phase delay, 1 to 2 hours behind an AM chronotype like me, who just simply wakes up early every day, absolutely starving, is at my best in the first half of the day, and then I will diminish throughout the day, which we'll come on to how you can cope with that in a minute. So first of all, identifying your chronotype is specific, not only to help yourself deal with the challenges of the day, to maximize and optimize your opportunities to be at your best, but also to minimize the effects of outside influences and colleagues and friends who may not share the same chronotype. And this is particularly important with adults who move into parenthood and children. That's a great way to really start to understand how you can educate your kids and yourself. Number 3 is thinking in cycles rather than hours. It's very quickly, when I look back into past generations sleeping, pre the electric light bulb being invented, the Industrial Revolution period, humans always slept in what's called a polyphasic way. That's multiphasic, triphasic and biphasic. It's basically shorter periods more often, just like infants coming into our lives. And when you look then at things like daylight saving time, it doesn't happen in every country, but this is a shift of clocks, which also changes our relationship with light and dark and seasonal changes. When you also look at technology impacting on us, and it's a great thing, technology, but it continues to just rip away all the little recovery moments that past generations had by default. When you look at that, sleeping in one monophasic block of 8 hours at night is probably the most unnatural thing that we can do. Nobody is arguing about the 8 hours a day in any 24, but how you get your 8 hours could be defined a little bit better. So in a clinic, when you look at somebody's sleep, when they're wired up with brainwave patterns from the frontal lobe, you can see those sleep phases and stages across a 90-minute period. Then you look at the next 90-minute period. So 5 90-minute cycles equals 7.5 hours. So immediately we've redefined what 8 hours means. It's 5 cycles a day, not just at night. We can also see within a 90-minute cycle, there is a shorter one called a 30-minute cycle. And that would be classified as a nap. We call them CRPs. Now, when we're looking at those, we look at our cycles of maybe 4 cycles at night and maybe 1 30-minute cycle in the early evening. Now, as I mentioned, being an AMer myself, is I will sleep a shorter period of night of 6 hours, 4 cycles, and then I'll use a 30-minute nap in the early evening period to take the pressure off my evening, to get me more presented towards sleep, and continually remind myself that it's not what I do just before I go to sleep. It's everything I do from the point of wake, which we come on to point 4. There's a lot of talk about pre-sleep, the things you do prior to going to sleep. Well, in my world, and what I educate people to do, is to think about what they do from the point of wake. Like nutrition and exercise, we are doing a mental and physical activity. In sleep, we are not doing that. So it's very much about presenting yourself to sleep. So it's helping your brain throughout the day, thinking about circadian rhythms, thinking about your chronotype, thinking about a polyphasic sleep approach, so that when you do present your brain to a period of recovery, whether it's early evening in a short CRP cycle, or longer periods like 4 cycles at night for 6 hours, then it will give you the best quality of mental and physical recovery that you're going to get. But you're not in control of it when you do it, and that's key. We look at a balance of activity and recovery, which is number 5. It's not easy to tell people to chill out, stop worrying, recovery sometimes is classified as being don't do anything, but not in sport. Recovery is an activity that helps you win gold medals. So this balance between activity and recovery is quite key. And it's when using this R90, 90-minute cycles, chopping your day up into 24 hours up into 16 90-minute cycle periods, you can actually see that every 90 minutes you're taking little distracted breaks. You're looking at these CRP moments, those natural other sleep periods, midday, early evening. You're looking at timings that can subconsciously stay in your head, so you don't even have to think about it, so you can be flexible as each day moves along. And this gives you a real element of control. It's not a routine, it's not fixed, it's not shouting at you, it's not telling you to do anything. It's just saying, I wake at this time, every 90 minutes are timings, this is when I can do this is when I do that. If somebody asks me to change that, I do this. If somebody actually wants to get up earlier, then I do this. The first 90 minutes of my day is the most important part of my day, so protect it. Da-di-da-di-da. And that all comes together to redefine it. So maybe 35 cycles in a week, 5 cycles a day, or the 5 a day. Hey, we haven't got the food thing right yet, so maybe we could start with a sleep 5 a day, and that might get us to a better point. We then got a number 6, and this is about environment. When you wander around the globe looking at sleep like I have, you see that the human beings sleep in so many different places, northern, southern hemispheres, in really cold climates, hot climates, living in countries where there are time zones like the US to cross, just moving from one state to the next. When you look at these things, you realize that human beings sleep anywhere, on anything, in any way, any time. So we do tend to, in certain parts of the Western world, focus so much on our environments and our bedrooms and our private sanctuaries and our boudoirs, when we actually should be making sure that any room that we choose or environment that we choose to sleep in must tick certain boxes. And then anything else that we put in that room, for us as our lifestyle choices, we either see and can identify as a barrier, or they're adding to our ability to mental and physical recovery when we choose to present ourselves to sleep. And number 7, from the KSRIs, the 7 KSRIs from the R90 technique, which I founded over 22 years in sport and been doing it since 1998, is products. I was an international sales and marketing director of a company where we made sleeping products. And my job was basically to come up with features and benefits and marketing tools and statements to compete with my competitors in the industry, not actually produce things for the consumer. Because the consumer, taking sleep for granted, just every now and again came into the market to buy mattresses and pillows. And they would just simply make those choices without any knowledge whatsoever. And as the marketplace has developed on, and now we've got lots of different choices online and offline, there are some basic principles of what you need to choose to sleep on. I coach people to sleep on the floor. I coach people to sleep on the side of mountains, in deserts, in very cold climates, on planes, on trains, in hotels, in their own rooms, with people and without people. So when we look at products, there are some key things. And just a quick takeaway for you all. The best sleeping position is fetal on the opposite side to your dominant side. Your arms gently folded, your knees bent. You should be in a natural fetal position with a really nice balance through the vertebrae and spine. And when you're lying on a surface like the floor, it'll push you away. So you need a pillow to put it under the head in this particular gap here. But when you move to your front and your back, it becomes an annoyance. So when you get the layers underneath you correctly in a natural fetal position on the opposite side to your dominant side, you should not require a pillow. Those layers are correct, then you can make a more considered choice about which pillow you might use. So many people just buy mattresses that are too hard, features and benefits, springs this, foam that, haven't got a clue, because every mattress is designed for every person. Well, I've never met 2 people who look or the same shape as me, although I fit into various groups. So this whole principle about what you sleep on is quite key, and that will also be investigated. So there's the 7 KSRIs. I can see that we're getting plenty of questions through, so we'll try and touch on some of those in a minute. And this is very much what we're going to be elaborating at the conference in April. So let's see if we can answer one or two of your questions. Okay. Okay. We've had a question in from Joanna Young, who says, I quite often go to work before my husband and wear an eye mask, so the light left on doesn't disturb me. But this is affecting my sleep as the natural light isn't getting to me the same. Aha. So you qualified that with sleep, not work. I think, Joanna, this has always been a problem. It's not quite easy to answer this to you. Hopefully you'll come along to the conference, but I'll maybe give you a more detailed answer later. But actually sleeping with other human beings is not natural for us. And you've identified why. We love the cuddling, the sex, the spooning, the security, and everything else. We sleep on our own for most of our life as in our formative years, and then we get somebody else to sleep with. We don't actually talk to them about their chronotype, whether they are an AM or a PMer, whether they are left or right-handed, and we start sleeping with them. Then we have occupations that come in and start changing those things. So I think what you're trying to do is, in a good way, to balance that light infinite. But what you would do is, if you need to use the eye mask, then the first thing that you need to do is expose yourself to light as quickly as you possibly can. So you still have to get up and you still have to start your day, if I'm reading your question correctly. You might want to be able to use something that I have right in my ears right now, which is actually the sun. It's going into my ear canal. It's called a human charger. It's around 10,000 lux. It's doing exactly the same as daylight coming in through the outside. And it's just making sure that I am not deficient in the level of light and exposure to light, as we pointed out, shifting between the seasons, daylight saving time, and also our partners and habits. Okay, she's asked another question, Joanna. You're asking us lots of questions, Joanna. How do you work out if you're an AM or PMer, and should you change your job accordingly? That would be nice. I think if we lived in a world where we could choose everything, that would be great. But I think what you do is, just by identifying your personal chronotype and looking at the circadian rhythms and thinking polyphasically, you can start to make more informed decisions about when you do exercise to get the full benefits out of it. Maybe you change some habits that you don't all follow everybody else just because they're going to the gym in the early evening. A polyphasic approach takes the emphasis off the evening, so it gives a bit more time to make those choices. And that would be something that you can't change your occupations, but certainly you can manage your occupation. And that's what we do, is look at all of these things and find a way for you to get around it. Should we sleep in separate bedrooms? I've been asked. Well, I have to say that a lot of my athletes, they do get married, they do have children, so they experience all the normal things everybody else does. And whilst it's always been a little bit of a stigma throughout my life about sleeping separately from somebody, I tell you what, when you start to think about your mental and physical recovery in the modern world, maybe you can get far more enjoyment and diversity through changing your approach to sleeping together. And when circumstances certainly prevail, then actually sort of good night, I'll see you in the morning, could be a relationship saver for some. So it's not for everybody, but I think it certainly is something we examine a lot more than we ever have done before. Joanna's asking lots of questions. I think there's a lot of things, Joanna, as you've mentioned here, that you could get such a thing. I always used the box and SAD previously. I think this is why, the Change the World conference is going to be so interesting. That's what it means, change the world, redefine your approach. There are so many things that we get bombarded with to introduce to ourselves. We've got all sorts of things like nasal devices to help you breathe. We've got nasal devices that go up your nose to help you breathe. We've got supplements to help you sleep. Some fantastic supplements to help you sleep. we've got pillow sprays, we've got nap sprays, we've got all sorts of things going on, nutritional plans, exercise plans, batch cooking, proteins, carbs, gluten-free, vegan, whatever's going on. It's very difficult sometimes to, and there's so many things around that you first of all need to focus on these core KSRIs to redefine your approach, and then you can start to look at some of these things to make a difference. And there's a lot of things out there that are not good for you and counterproductive, but there are things out there that would really suit you once you've redefined your approach. So I think we've done our full slot. We've had quite a lot of questions in. We need to bring this to a close. So I thank everybody for tuning in today. Get your tickets. Get yourself to Inverness if you possibly can. It's going to be a great event. I look forward to seeing everybody there. And we'll try and answer all your questions after the event. So keep an eye on that. And thank you for Susie, Change the World. And thank you very much. Goodbye.